This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Death toll rises to 52 after 2 migrant boats sank off the coast of Djibouti. Burundi to attend Friday's East Africa Community Heads of State Summit after forcing cancellation of 2 previous meetings. This, the hits and misses as Liberia's President George Weah marks 1 year in office. All right, welcome to Africa Live on CGTN. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi, alongside Panina Karibe with the business headlines.
Thanks, Richard. And coming up in business, the Commercial Bank of Africa and NIC Group sign a merger deal worth $645 million, and Saudi Arabia raises more than $100 billion in its anti-corruption drive. Details of those stories and plenty more coming up a bit later on in this bulletin. For now, back to you, Richard.
We start the program in Djibouti, where at least 52 people have been confirmed dead, with scores still missing after 2 migrant boats sank just off the coast of the country. The 2 vessels capsized near Gadoria in Djibouti's Obak region and were bound for Yemen. According to survivors, the vessels were carrying migrants from Ethiopia. The International Organization for Migration says the tragedy happened half an hour after the voyage began. 16 people have been rescued. 1 survivor has told authorities there were 130 people on his boat, but the number of passengers on the second vessel remains unclear. Djibouti has become a transit point for migrants heading to the Arabian Peninsula.
Our coast guards have retrieved the bodies of 52 migrants. The death toll may go up as operations are still ongoing.
I traveled to the coast by foot to meet a trafficker. 85 of us boarded a boat, a single boat. A few minutes after setting sail, the captain jumped from the boat as the engine failed. Then it capsized.
Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir says his country has reopened its border with Eritrea. Sudan closed the border with its neighbor in early January 2018 after Bashir announced a 6-month state of emergency in the regions of Kassala and North Kordofan. This was to help combat the trafficking of weapons and foodstuffs. And to East Africa now, Burundi has confirmed that it will attend this year's East African Community Heads Summit in Arusha, Tanzania. The meeting is scheduled for February the 1st rather. This gives hope for implementation of integration programs, which has stalled after Bujumbura's last-minute pullout on November the 30th last year. The Great Lakes region nation had cited unresolved matters. The temporary fallout was seen as a litmus test for the East African trading bloc. Some observers were already comparing it to the collapse of a similar initiative in 1977. All right, let's get you more on this. I'm joined live from Dar es Salaam by CGTN's Daniel Kijo. Daniel, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on Africa Live. What are the heads of state confirmed to be attending Friday's meeting, and has any arrived as yet?
Hello, Richard. The meeting, many heads of state have confirmed the meeting, but the host, President Magufuli, has arrived in Arusha this evening, as well as Burundi's vice president, who reports say will be representing President Nkurunziza tomorrow. Now, it is still unclear whether the Burundian president will come, but as of now, the vice president is in Arusha region. Other heads of state, like President Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, and South Sudan Salva Kiir, are expected early tomorrow.
All right, Daniel, could you give us some insight on what the main items of the agenda for this summit will be?
Yes, Richard. The heads of state will discuss many things, among them the East African Community calendar of events starting January to June 2019, the resolution of an outstanding non-tariff barrier discussion of bringing removing tariffs among the countries. Also, they will discuss the progress report on the adoption of a political federation as a transitional model for the East African Political Federation. Other items on the agenda include the roadmap for integration of South Sudan into the East African community, and also the verification exercise of the Republic of Somalia into a community. They will also be addressing key bills, for instance, the East African Community Python Materials Control Bill of 2018. Now, this shows that the region is coming together with a common vision of passing a bill for the elimination of the use of plastic bags. So there are many other things, but this just some of the ones that we were informed of.
Okay. Now, Daniel, we do know that Burundi pulled out of the last two meetings citing unresolved matters. What were these, and have they now been resolved?
Well, as you said, the summit was postponed twice last year, once in November as well as in December again when Burundi forced its cancellation. The reasons were speculated. There's no official communication from the East African Community Secretariat. But however, in the coming hours towards tomorrow and early morning, we'll find out exactly if the president is coming, despite the fact that the vice president for Burundi is there. So many in the region are waiting to see the outcome of this third attempt to bring these heads of state together.
All right. Daniel Kijo, thank you for that reporting. Moving on now and staying in the country, Tanzania has risen to the top 100 least corrupt countries in the world, according to a new Transparency International report. Now, the country now sits second in East Africa, topped only by Rwanda. CGTN's Daniel Kijo reports again.
Transparency found that Tanzania is making strides to reduce the level of corruption in the country. According to the latest Corruption Perceptions Index, the country is ranked at 99 out of 180 countries globally, from 117 in 2015. Some experts attribute the improvement to President Magufuli's strong stance against corruption. In 2015, the president ran an anti-corruption platform, and since then he's been making headlines by banning ministers from luxury foreign travels, sacking corrupt or lazy officials, and making people clean the streets on popular public holidays. Officials say it's all about the system.
Prevention through strengthening systems. We strengthen systems that they do not provide opportunities for corruption. And we also use educational system, community education.
Tanzania's zero tolerance on corruption is considered to be bearing fruits as revenue collection has gone up. Despite this, there are still challenges.
You know, fighting corruption is not an easy job. First of all, I think the first challenge is mindset. I think we have people in our society who actually believe in that they cannot move without corruption. They are glorifying corruption. We need to change their mindset. I think the first challenge is the mindset.
The country's battle against corruption is one that won't end overnight, and the opposition says corruption started and grew out of control under the governing party's rule. But this report suggests that Tanzania is making some progress. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania.
And to Liberia now, where President George Weah is marking 1 year in office, taking stock of his achievements to date. The former international football star has promised to crack down on corruption and turn around the economy in a country that's recovering from years of war and an Ebola outbreak. Beryl Oro has more. Let's take a look.
President George Weah has highlighted some of his government's achievements and challenges since taking office in January 2018.
Liberia's trade deficit stood at $561.8 million United States dollars for the period of January to November 2018. Although this represents a 17.1% improvement as compared to $677.3 million for the same period in 2017. It is important to note that the weak performance of the real economy has for so long been characterized by low export earnings as compared to payment for imports.
Weah succeeded Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who was credited with shoring up peace but criticized for doing little to lift Liberians out of poverty. One of Weah's campaign promises was to end the prolonged economic misery for the nation.
By 2023, we expect the economy to grow by a further 4.7% on account of further expansion in commercial, gold production, growth in the agriculture and forestry sector, formation of special economic zones, and other economic reforms envisaged under the Pro-Poor Agenda for Prosperity and Development.
Many young people who supported the former football star had high expectations.
We thought when this government took over, we were going to see the country progressing quick in less than 3 months' time. Because the news we're hearing around saying when the government take power, the first 90 days, the U.S. will drop. The first 90 days, tin prices will drop, but tin prices going high.
Liberia is Africa's old and modern republic, but it has been plagued by years of unrest and bloodshed. And Weah faces huge hurdles in delivering tangible benefits to his supporters amid a gutted economy and waning donor support. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
In Zimbabwe, the Umbrella Public Sector Union has backed down from plans for a national strike. According to an official, the decision was made due to the volatile situation in the country after this month's violent protests were met by a brutal security crackdown. Wage negotiations between the government and the Apex Council broke down earlier this week. The unions have since met to decide on a date for a strike, but the talks ended in disarray. All right, you are watching Africa Live on CGTN. Time now for a short break, but when we return, let's take a look. At police in Mozambique, they arrest 6 Ugandans over alleged links to terrorism and kidnappings. Residents of the Central African Republic call for a lifting of arms embargo as deadline draws close.
Don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Police in Mozambique arrest 6 Ugandans over alleged links to terrorism and kidnappings. Well, Uganda is working with Mozambique to have the suspected Al-Shabaab members extradited. Isabel Nakiria has that story. Let's take a look.
The 6 Ugandans are believed to be part of the Somali-based terror group Al-Shabaab. The Mozambican forces allegedly picked them from the district of Cabo Delgado, an area known to have terrorist operational bases.
We also have information that at the lower levels there was some bit of recruitment that was taking place where we have lower cadres, the youth who have been probably lured into acts of terrorism, and they have been using Mozambique as a training ground.
Ugandan police say the suspects could have escaped from Uganda's capital, Kampala, in April 2018 after security forces raided a mosque in the city. 2 people were shot dead during the raid and more than 80 women and children rescued. The Usafi Mosque in downtown Kampala was believed to be a training cell for Islamic fundamentalists before it was dismantled. Ugandan police said discussions with the Mozambique government are ongoing to have the 6 transferred to face trial. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala.
The United Nations arms embargo on the Central African Republic expires tonight, January the 31st. The Security Council is due to meet to decide on whether or not to extend the sanctions imposed on the country. Thousands of residents in the capital Bangui have urged the Security Council to lift the embargo. CGTN's Huli Shabalala has more.
Every year, the United Nations Security Council has extended the arms embargo on the Central African Republic. The sanctions have been in place since 2013 in order to stabilize the war-torn nation. But this year, around 3,000 people in the capital Bangui have called for the UN to lift the arms ban.
I am angry for my country. We want the immediate lift of the arms embargo to give power to our armed forces to start working on bringing peace to our country.
How can we say that the arms embargo is a good thing for our country while our national army does not have weapons and the rebels are arming themselves every day? They're killing our parents and provincial areas every day, and the international community is aware of all this.
The country's prime minister took demonstrators and a petition to the president's office. Authorities in the Central African Republic wanted security forces to work alongside the UN mission in the country to help secure peace.
There is a lock that needs to be opened. What is that lock? It is the one that is impacting our security forces. The humanity that defines the international community has to lead them to pay attention to the call from the heart of the people of Central Africa.
The UN arms embargo says the shipment of weapons to the Central African Republic must be approved by the Sanctions Committee. This is to ensure that imported weapons do not end up in the hands of militia.
The elections were organized. We have a legitimate regime, democratically legitimate, and that regime has been working for some time to put things back in order, including reinstating security and defense forces in all parts.
The CAR has been in turmoil since 2013. Rebels and militia now control about 80% of the country. Huli Shabalala, CGTN.
The head of the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo is calling for strengthened ties with the new Congolese government. At the same time, the UN Stabilization Mission says it wants to help promote peace and democracy in the country. Mission Chief Leila Zeragui made the remarks in Kinshasa after meeting newly declared President Felix Tshisekedi. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa reports.
The UN Stabilization Mission in the DRC has embarked on strengthening its relationship with the new Congolese government. It had a frosty relationship with the former government of President Joseph Kabila. It was criticized for failing to get rid of rebels in the east despite its strong presence in the country. But efforts are being made to mend fences.
Hier, j'ai rencontré pour la première fois le nouveau président de la République dans ses nouvelles fonctions.
I met President Tshisekedi yesterday and informed him that the UN peacekeeping mission is the DRC's partner. We asked him to support us to execute our mandate of protecting civilians and stabilizing the country.
Last year, the UN Security Council renewed the mission's mandate with a focus on protecting civilians and supporting the government to implement a political agreement signed in 2016. Its mandate expires in March this year. Ms. Zeragui commended Congolese people for holding the country's first peaceful transfer of power. But the DRC's presidential election was disputed by opposition candidate Martin Fayulu and members of the Catholic Church. A petition filed by Mr. Fayulu was dismissed by the Constitutional Court. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
A top United Nations official is visiting Mogadishu to iron out tension between the Somali government and the global body. It comes weeks after Somali authorities declared the former UN envoy Nicholas Haysom persona non grata. He had raised human rights issues with the Somali government. CGTN's Abdulaziz Billo has more from Mogadishu. Let's take a look.
This is the first high-profile visit by a top United Nations official to Somalia, weeks after the Somali government expelled Nicholas Haysom, the UN chief's former envoy to the Horn of African nation. Rosemary DiCarlo, the UN Under-Secretary for Political Affairs, met with the country's President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo and Prime Minister Hassan Ali Khaire to discuss future cooperation between Somalia and the global body. The top diplomat also praised recent progress made by the Somali administration.
Our goal is to support Somali-led initiatives, and we are working in a range of areas. We are very pleased to see, as I said, progress that's been made. It's been made in the area of governance, the area of human rights, women's rights, which are part of human rights, constitutional reviews and reforms. We know that you're planning for a very important election in 2020, and the United Nations is prepared to provide support.
The visit by the Undersecretary comes ahead of a possible announcement of a new special envoy. The former envoy Nicholas Haysom was accused of violating the country's sovereignty after he raised concerns regarding the arrest of Mukhtar Robo Abu Mansour, a former Al-Shabaab commander who was barred from contesting in regional elections. His arrest triggered days of violence that claimed the lives of 15 people, among them a regional lawmaker.
We appreciate the role of the UN in Somalia, the supportive role of the UN to the state building, peace building, security, and the rest of issues. So Ms. Mary's visit was a timely one, was an important one. It follows a time when there was a little bit of tension between the UN and Somalia. We have gone past these, little tensions. The Prime Minister and the President reassured Ms. Mary of the government's commitment to the progress that Somalia has made, thanks in a great part to the support that the UN has provided to Somalia.
Earlier this month, the militant group Al-Shabaab launched a barrage of mortars aimed at the UN compound in Mogadishu, injuring 3 UN staff members, a move that has forced the global body to reduce its staff footprint. Abdulaziz Bilon, CGTN, Mogadishu, Somalia.
To South Sudan now, where the United Nations says unexploded landmines pose one of the biggest threats to locals as the country recovers from a lengthy civil war. The UN and the government have jointly destroyed a massive bomb, marking the demolition of 1 million explosive devices in the country since 2004. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more.
The UN and South Sudan's government are destroying an unexploded 100-kilogram airdrop bomb to mark 1 million explosives destroyed in the country. The bomb, found near Juba International Airport in December last year, was dropped during the war between North and South Sudan, which ended in 2005. UN says the return of peace in the country is making it possible to speed up the removal of unexploded landmines and other ordnance across the country.
We've got a good program going on at the moment to support WFP, so it can deliver food more efficiently in the Upper Nile and Jonglei areas. We have people clearing runways and landing sites to enable other humanitarian actors to get in and work.
The UN says 1 million square meters of land is now free of landmines in South Sudan, but a lot of work still remains. Experts say it will take up to 5 years of concerted efforts to ensure that mines planted in areas such as these ones are removed and the country is declared free of landmines. The UN says 80% of those doing the mining work are now South Sudanese.
This work really is helping our country, because after cleaning like this one, after we clear, people will be free, moving without fear. Also for cultivation for the locals.
South Sudan's government is urging the UN to create awareness among the local communities of the danger posed by unexploded landmines and ordnance.
We hope these people must help to continue with this work so that we clear all the landmines in the contaminated areas.
The UN says that in January alone, 8 people were injured and 1 killed by landmines in the country. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Bilinyang, South Sudan.
In Nigeria, trouble is brewing for the newly appointed Chief Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad and the suspended Chief Justice Walter Onnoghen. Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad was appointed and sworn in last weekend by President Muhammadu Buhari after his predecessor, Justice Walter Onnoghen, was suspended for underdeclaring his personal wealth. Nigeria's Judiciary Council has now ordered both judges to file a defense against a professional misconduct petition within 7 days. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has more.
It's a dramatic turn of events for the acting Chief Justice and his predecessor. The National Judicial Council held a crisis meeting on Tuesday, and the outcome was nothing short of a bombshell. They want both judges to file a response to allegations of corruption and professional misconduct. Usually, judicial officers are allowed 14 days, but the council gave only 7 days due to the gravity of the matter. 2 of the petitions are against acting Chief Justice Ibrahim Tanko Muhammad. He has hardly completed a week in office. Justice Walter Onnoghen, who's already being tried for holding numerous undeclared bank accounts, has 1 case to answer. The 4th petition is against the chairman of the Code of Conduct Tribunal, Danladi Yakubu Umar, whose cardinal role is to fight corruption among public servants. The Code of Conduct Court he heads has been battling to defend its rights to try Walter Onnoghen. The Judicial Council has not made public details of the complaints against the judges, but this could turn out to be the most damaging revelation Nigeria's judiciary has ever suffered. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
A few thousand Israeli demonstrators, many of Ethiopian descent, have taken to the streets of Tel Aviv to protest against police brutality. It follows the death of a 24-year-old Israeli Ethiopian, Yehudu Biadga, who was shot and killed by a police officer earlier this month. Israeli media reports the young man was wielding a knife and was mentally unstable. Protesters have blocked a major highway and burned rubbish during the demonstrations. At least 6 people were injured, 11 people dead.
There is a demonstration taking place by the Ethiopian community. Prior to the demonstration, police units met with the leaders of the communities in order to make sure that the situation will be calm and quiet. Our units will respond to any incidents if they'll take place whatsoever.
We are here today protest against violence about our community. Last week been killed by police, one of the Ethiopian Israeli adults killed by police. And today we are here to protest and to say no more violence against us. We are here. We had so many years of dreaming to be a part of the Israeli society, and today we are saying no more violence against us.
You're watching breaking news on CGTN.
Recapping your headlines at this hour, at least 52 people have been confirmed dead, with scores still missing after two migrant boats sank just off the coast of Djibouti. The two vessels capsized near Godoria in Djibouti's Obak region and were bound for Yemen. According to survivors, the vessels were carrying migrants from Ethiopia. The International Organization for Migration says the tragedy happened half an hour after the voyage began. Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir says his country has reopened its borders with Eritrea. Sudan closed the border with its neighbor in early January 2018 after Bashir announced a 6-month state of emergency in the regions of Kassala and North Kordofan. This was to help combat the trafficking of weapons and foodstuffs. Sudanese French President Emmanuel Macron has visit to Egypt. Macron spoke about the crisis in Libya, economic ties with the North African country, and plans ahead of Egypt, African Union. His talks about France also on the continent. And the United Nations embargo on the Central African Republic expires tonight, January the 31st. The Security Council is due to meet to decide on whether or not to extend the sanctions imposed on the country. Thousands of residents in the capital, Bangui, have urged Security Council to lift the embargo. And that is a wrap of your top stories. All right, and it's now right back to you, Penina, with our business headlines.
Thank you, Richard. And coming up in business, the Commercial Bank of Africa and NIC Group signed a merger deal worth $645 million. And Saudi Arabia raises more than $100 billion in its anti-corruption drive.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The Commercial Bank of Africa and NIC Group have confirmed their merger in a deal valued at $645 million. Upon completion, the Kenyan banks are expected to be listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. CBA shareholders will be issued with 53% stake, effectively making the deal a reverse takeover of NIC. The deal values each NIC share at $0.43, representing a 48.7% premium to the bank's Wednesday closing price of $0.29. It is, however, a discount of nearly 10% to NIC's book value of $0.48. Saudi Arabia says it has recovered more than $100 billion in its anti-corruption drive that started in 2017. The assets recovered include property and cash. Settlements were reached with 87 people who confessed to charges laid against them. 8 others refused to do so and have been referred to the public prosecutor. Another 56 cases have not been settled because of criminal charges yet to be resolved. More than 200 princes, ministers and business officials have been held in hotels in the capital Riyadh, including the 5-star Ritz-Carlton. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, is ramping up investment into South Africa's oil industry. The Gulf state is the world's leading Brent crude oil producer. It's also South Africa's biggest oil supplier. It's now investing $10 billion into the country to build an oil refinery and petrochemicals plant. Sumitra Naidu reports.
Saudi Arabia wants to expand its global footprint. It's planning to spend $10 billion in South Africa to build a new oil refinery and improve existing facilities. It also wants to create a storage base in Saldanha.
I think it's very positive. We currently have probably around just under 10 refinery plants in the country. And I think any investment and expansion of that particular sector will definitely be very beneficial, not only for South Africa, but also for the entire continent, because once we refine here and we also hear they want to also store some of the oil here, it's good for the continent, and we will be able to supply the rest of the continent with the oil that we have.
South Africa is a net importer of crude oil, and Saudi Arabia is one of South Africa's biggest suppliers of the commodity. South Africa has a few refineries that are run by big multinational companies like Engen and Chevron. Locally owned Sasol provides only a small percentage of the country's oil needs.
We do have the infrastructure locally to do a lot of interesting things when it comes to petroleum. I mean, we have Sasol here, so we've done quite innovative things in the past as well. So I don't think it'll be a huge impact in terms of the technology and so on. If you go to the south of Durban, you can see massive operations happening in terms of oil refinery and so on in South Africa at the moment.
As a net importer, South Africans are subject to currency fluctuations that determine fuel prices. The price of petrol shot to a record high in 2018, causing much pain for motorists. The Saudi investment will not only create jobs, but it might limit price increases if more oil is refined and stored locally.
Where it makes a serious impact is on job creations, making sure that we've now got enough capacity, and we've also got an industry that's now looking to employ more people. One of the biggest challenges for South Africa is job creation, and I think that refinery project, just the building, will certainly create some jobs.
The project is also likely to bolster stockpiles and help create a more stable and secure supply chain for the sub-Saharan African region. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Still in South Africa, Deputy Finance Minister Mondli Gumbele has denied allegations of graft at the Public Investment Corporation. This follows an email sent to the company's board by a whistleblower disclosing such claims. PIC's acting CEO and 2 board members are among the accused. The PIC has $147 billion of civil servants' pensions under its custody. It's also Africa's biggest pension fund. An ongoing judicial inquiry was set up after PIC's former chief executive was alleged to have misused funds after investing in local firm IO Technology Solutions. The technology firm's share price is down more than 50% since it listed on the JSE market in 2017. The Nigerian government has launched another initiative to increase domestic revenue after its voluntary income declaration scheme failed to hit set targets. Africa's largest economy is looking to more than double its tax to GDP ratio from 6 to 15%. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam reports.
Another initiative being launched to improve domestic revenue collection in Nigeria. This one is called the Strategic Revenue Initiative. It targets big data, which means all data relevant to taxation will be collected from the banking system, customs, ports, and company registry will be made available to enhance tax collection. It follows the Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme, which failed to hit its target. The Voluntary Assets and Income Declaration Scheme expired last year, and Nigeria's Federal Inland Revenue Service was able to collect $14.6 billion, a significant rise from the $11 billion collected in 2017, but below the target of the government.
At the conclusion of it, we did find out that there are quite a number of people that did not take advantage of this opportunity. And based on the information that we have, we first of all have linked up with the banking sector, and to our utmost dismay, we broke them into 2 sections. We had those that had banking turnover in excess of 1 billion naira annually for 3 years, and we found out that close to 6,000 businesses had not complied with the tax regulations. We went further down to 100 million to 1 billion, and the analysis that we have seen, we have a list of close to 75,000 accounts of businesses that have not filed or paid any taxes.
Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio is below its peers like Ghana, where tax to GDP ratio is at 16%. And its main source of revenue, crude oil exports, have proven very unreliable due to unstable prices in the global markets. Its government now wants to collect all taxable revenue to fund development projects. It has contracted international tax consultants to advise on how to maximize domestic revenue collection.
We are targeting the use of big data
That is to say, we are going to harness all the data that is available at FIRs and customs and CAC and the banks and several other agencies that house data that is relevant, that is related to taxes. The use of this data will be driven, of course, by an automation process. There is a new project that we call Project Lighthouse that is working to bring the use of this data, and FIRS will be leading on this Project Lighthouse. And very soon also we will commission Project Lighthouse.
Unlike the pragmatic approach under the Voluntary Assets Declaration Scheme, the Strategic Revenue Initiative will no longer depend on goodwill of potential taxpayers. It will be an aggressive effort to go after tax evaders using data from key business points. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
A Finnish company in Kenya is creating jobs for youths from disadvantaged areas in the country's capital, Nairobi. The company produces quality sunglasses out of wood. I paid them a visit to see how this workshop is turning around lives, one pair of sunglasses at a time. At a glance, it doesn't look like much is going on here. But this is a workshop for Shares, a Finnish company that produces quality sunglasses made of wood. The company started its production in Kenya last year in May, and its uniqueness lies in its workforce.
It's a company that helps the youth from disadvantaged areas, and it helps them in the sense that it gives them livelihood and a place where they can come and be busy. Also, it gives them a place where they can come and learn a new life skill.
Shares 15 employees live in the sprawling Kariobangi slums in Nairobi. They are in their early 20s. Most of them didn't complete their high school education, and some, like Ravon, are reformed criminals.
Most of my friends are dead. They were shot dead. Others are in jail because of the criminal activities they engaged in. So I decided to grab this opportunity, and I proved to the management that I can change, and here I am.
I was a mobile salonist braiding and unbraiding hair, but I did not have many clients. For example, once you braid your hair, you will not undo it in the next day. So in a month, I would get very few clients, and it was hard to cope.
For 3 months, they all underwent rigorous training on how to produce a quality product that would compete with already established brands. The raw materials come from Finland, but the entire production is done in this workshop. From designing the sunglasses to cutting them, polishing and fitting the lenses. It is a meticulous process that sees them produce on average 60 pairs of sunglasses a day. For most of us, wearing sunglasses is almost second nature. They're a useful pair to shield you from the harsh sun rays or just simply to look cool. But for this group of youth involved in these sunglasses production, they're literally a lifeline.
This job has really helped me. First of all, I no longer hang out with that bad company. I pay my own bills, including rent. Now I have a family and I provide for them. If it wasn't for this job, I don't know where I would be. I would probably be dead.
I'm a mother of one son, 1 year, 8 months. So at least I'm renting my own house.
Their clients are mainly in Europe, but they are hoping to break into the Kenyan market mid this year and have partnered with brand ambassadors to market these wooden glasses.
The biggest advantage is it's not plastic. That's number one. Number two, it's biodegradable. Plastic is not. Number three, you're saving the environment. In that, where we get our pieces of wood, the trees are felled to create space for other trees to grow.
One pair retails at $70 and the company says 20% of every pair sold is directly spent on supporting the professional education and employment of young people living in the Kariobangi slum. Penina Karibe, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya. All right, we shall leave it there for now in the business segment. But coming up at the top of the hour on Global Business, we'll be exploring Atiku Abubakar's radical proposal to boost Nigeria's revenues. We shall be live from Lagos for a further discussion on that. That will be at the top of the hour. I'll see you then. Now, Richard, back to you.
Thanks, Penina. This is Africa Live on CGTN. We've got lots more news coming your way after the break, including... A group of Tunisian women turned to social media to galvanize support for polygamy to be recognized.
Join us from Global Business and see Africa through our eyes. The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Qanater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. A group of Tunisian women have turned to social media to galvanize support for their bid for polygamy to be recognized in the North African country. Currently, it is illegal for a man to have more than one wife. Rights organizations and lawyers have denounced the call, saying it will violate women's rights.
A group of Tunisian men and women have launched a campaign on social networks to call for polygamy in Tunisia. Experts at the Center for Economic and Social Studies and Research argue that the main goal of the campaign is to attack the Islamic movement in the country.
Polygamy was allowed in Islam and other religions long time ago for certain cultural and social reasons. The goal of the so-called polygamy campaign, which I consider fake news, is to target the Islamic current in Tunisia and show that Islamic parties and movements are against women's rights.
Islamic scholars believe that Tunisians have many priorities, which do not include marrying more than one woman.
Tunisians are facing unprecedented social and economic challenges. It is already difficult to take care of one wife and one family. Nowadays, calling for polygamy is a form of social suicide.
Tunisian authorities assert that legislators did not authorize polygamy in the 2014 constitution. Therefore, polygamous marriages are not only unauthorized, they are illegal and therefore punishable by law. Samia Abu is a current MP and a former member of the Constituent Assembly. She is one of the 217 parliamentarians who drafted the new constitution in 2014. The lawyer condemns polygamy and any violation to women's rights.
The 2014 Constitution is one of the most modern legal texts in the world. It guarantees equality between men and women. Calling for polygamy is a way of attacking women's rights, which are sacred in Tunisia.
Judge Anwar Mnasri is a women's rights activist. She explains that Tunisian parliamentarians, including the most radical members, will never be able to legalize polygamy in the future.
The anti-polygamy text was an ordinary law. In 2014, it became a basic law which cannot be drafted unless 119 MPs vote for it. Therefore, even discussing polygamy in parliament is impossible in Tunisia.
The Code of Personal Status is a series of progressive Tunisian laws aiming at the institution of equality between women and men in a number of areas. 62 years after its application, any polygamous citizen could be sentenced to 3 months in prison. Aden Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
All right, time now for